At this time, I would like to introduce Miss Jennifer from McMinnville.
Jennifer, I'm an addict. NA has really gave me a better quality of life in relationships. Starting out, your first interaction with a relationship is with your parents. And so, growing up, my first outlook with relationships was my parents, and it wasn't always a safe place to be in the house. And so, my first experience was them just always arguing, but when we was out in public, everything always looked to be perfect. And so I just carried that. And they was always concerned with each other, so it was just like I was this lone child, just always looking for some way to be accepted and loved. And so growing up, you got to look a certain way, you got to do certain things to gain your parents' attention, and I was learning that as I was going. So I really left and abandoned myself early on. And so I carried that throughout my life. My first drug was men. That was where I would get attention, where I felt loved, where I felt seen. And when things would go to the wayside, I would go to the next one. Wouldn't even be out of a relationship. I'd be talking to someone else, because I was just always looking for that loved and acceptance and that feeling. And so, when drugs got introduced, it became a whole nother level. And you get put in places and knowing that if you do certain things with a person, that you're going to get the thing that's making me feel better than what men made me feel. And so, I'm so sorry, I'm rattling. And so, I was just out there trying to survive, just trying to not feel this void, this emptiness. And always trying to present like my parents had taught me. Everything looked good on the outside to the outside world. In my eyes, I looked fine. I felt like nobody knew I had an addiction problem. It was perfect on the outside, but on the inside, I was in turmoil. And so, and so I didn't know how to treat myself. I didn't know how to treat others. And I had been brought up in church. On the outside, you would have thought that I was spiritually connected with my higher power. That was not the case. There was still always this void, but I felt like if I just looked like the rest of the people, that's what I would become. And so I get to NA. Well, hang on. Let me back up. So I'd been in and out of a lot of relationships, let me say that. And my last relationship at the end of a good run in my addiction had went south. I was trying to do everything I could to make this person happy. And I felt like if I was bringing in the drugs, I was going to keep him. Like, that's what in my head. And so I was going to where I would always get drugs and doing things that I am not proud of, just to gain the drugs, just because if I can keep him high, he's going to love me, and we're going to have this relationship. It was just going to be perfect in my head. And so then, until things wasn't. And then when things had came out that I indeed was not being faithful, things really just took an ugly turn. And it had just, it led to the chaos in the house. We was both high. My children had found my drugs. DCS was called. Kids got took out of the home. And then there I was, still trying to hang on to this one thing, this relationship. I was like, I can't lose everything. And you're sitting here, you're trying to live without drugs, and it's just not. It's more to it than just the drugs. And so, to make a long story short, we ended up separating and going our separate ways. And for about 9 months after we separated, I was like, well, I'm fine, everything's fine. I was in and out of meetings. I was coming in, I was like, I've got a drug problem, but I don't have a problem with drinking. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take what you always say, come in and take what you need and leave the rest, So I was using that. I was manipulating that to my benefit. And so here I was, and then until that was a problem. And, and then until I ended up going back out. I ended up going back to my drug of choice. And so, and then once that had hit, I was just like, oh, no, I'm almost got my children back. And I can't do this. I can't lose them. So I'm going to put this back down, but I'm just going to stay drinking. And every once in a while. I'm only going to drink when I'm with someone that is not going to let me go to the dope man's house. That's what I was sitting there thinking. And so here it was Christmas time. I was barely making enough to get by. And I had always been able to provide my children with a good Christmas. And that year just didn't look like it was going to happen. And so I had was doing what I knew, and I was going with my youngest's father, and we was like, oh, we was going to go Christmas shopping. We was going to buy enough for Christmas, and so she would have a good Christmas. And in order for me to put up with him, I was just like, I'm going to have some drinks. I am not going to be able to be in the same place as him. And so I ended up drinking that night while we was going and getting our daughter gifts. And that next morning, because I was he was not a good person, and but I couldn't not let my child have a good Christmas in my head. I just couldn't do that. And so that next morning, I had gotten up out of my bed. I had made him, he was on the couch, and ended up just having to do what I didn't want to do, because in my head, that's what you did. If somebody gave you something, you was going to give them what they wanted. And in that moment, that's when I realized I had a problem with everything, and that I had to put things down. I went to an NA meeting that day, and knowing I was going to have to quit everything and actually get a sponsor in town and start actually living the program that had been instilled in me for the past 9 months. And so I got a sponsor, got honest, was like, hey, I'd been drinking. She's like, well, you're going to have to pick up a white key tag. You can't pick up your year and keep on acting like you've not been. And so that's where my first relationship, my true healthy relationship began, was with my sponsor. And I was as honest as I could be with her at first, and I was thinking I was totally honest, but I wasn't. Like, it took me a minute. And so, but through getting honest with her and begin working the steps, we got into step 1, and I was still in great denial about the relationship with my children. I thought I had provided them a home with a healthy household, which was not the fact, and so she was able to help me open up and see that. And so, and through this growth and being loved and accepted for just who I am, I was able to start beginning to love myself and give myself respect. And so I took her advice. I spent my first year in recovery, not in a relationship, and to prove to myself that I didn't need a man to be loved and worthy, and to focus on myself and to build a relationship with a higher power. I still kind of struggle with that today. Some months, weeks are better than others with staying connected. But, but one thing I have gained awareness in NA is that my higher power always loves me, whether I feel like I'm connected or not. That he does have my back and is watching over me, because I don't think I would have made it in NA as long as I did without my higher power looking out for me. And so after it was over a year of being clean, the guy I was in a relationship with, we had crossed paths in NA and had begun talking. And, my sponsor's like, we need to get through step 4. You need to get through step 4 before you get in a relationship. You need to know what you have to offer. And I was just like, well, I'm working step 4, but I'm not all the way through it. And so she's like, well, pray about it. Didn't want to hear about that, And so I proceeded with this relationship. And, it's funny. You can take the drugs away, but if you're not really working on yourself and working the steps, a lot of things are still there. A lot of the way you interact with each other, the way you just respond to things, and it's difficult. Being in active addiction with someone you love, and then coming over into recovery and being with that person, because there's a lot of trauma there for both people, and not to say that it can't work, because it's worked for me so far, but how it's worked was that is working the steps, not losing contact with my sponsor, still making meetings, because in the beginning it's all fun and games and you want to be together, but you still got to go to your meetings, because I just knew that if I had pulled myself out of what I had been doing, I was going to end up right back to where I was at. And so, end up getting married, and things are peachy keen, and you go through that first year, and it's kind of still trying to figure things out. But I think the one thing that has really amplified a true connection with someone, being in recovery, is when I got to step 6 and started looking at myself and started looking at my defects, and I was like, oh, I have a lot of stuff going on with myself. And it's wild, because I've had all these problems, and it's always been him, it's always been him. And And then I get to step 6, and we're starting to talk about these defects, and I was just like, oh, okay. I can see my self-centeredness and my need to control things, how that can cause problems in your relationship. And so, and I'm still working my step 6. I mean, I've completed it. We're still going over it, but I feel like that's too, like, me sitting down with my sponsor and, like, yes, I've wrote on this, but it's like when I sit down with her and I'm talking about my defects and we're, like, really digging into that, and I was just like, okay, here comes some awareness about myself, and, and starting to learn these principles, giving grace that I can't work their program for them. Just because I think they need to do X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that that's what they need to do. Maybe I need to do that, because I love to project. And so, it's been good. It's been really good. But I have to give that to NA, because my quality of life, whether it's with myself, my higher power, with my friends, loved ones, my husband, my children, that's all come from NA. NA has helped me grow up and showed me love and acceptance, and just for who I am. I don't have to be anything else. And y'all love me for when I'm gradually ready to take these masks off. And so, I'll be forever grateful for NA. Addiction was a tough road, and I didn't think I was ever going to get out. I didn't think I saw a day that I could survive without a substance, especially the guilt and shame of my actions even prior to the drugs. And so, it's been good. And, if the most experience I can give someone that with your relationships in recovery is just working your steps. And I know that sounds so simple, and it's just like, I want some more than that. But it is. It's like this growing, evolving person, and like it just radiates out into other things. That's all I got.
Thank you, Miss Jennifer. Next we got my brother from another. Let me just say something about him real quick, man. When I first got to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, coming from Florida, he was the first person I met. He was my house manager, actually. And then when I came, I kept going out, relapsing. And about 13 months ago, I called him on the phone. And he got me into one of the best treatment centers that I ever went to. And my recovery has kicked off since then. We went to a couple football games recently, man. And, he's just an inspiration to me. I love you, Brandon. Brandon from Millville, y'all.
I'm Brandon. I'm an addict. Grateful to be here today. Grateful for Narcotics Anonymous. Thank you, Scott, for asking us to do this workshop on relationships and recovery. And let me tell you something. My job that I do every day, I talk to a lot of people, and I get to do. I'm never nervous when I talk to them. You know what I mean? Like that's how I make my living. But them people don't know me. You guys do. You know what I mean? So it's always when I get in front of a crowd of recovering addicts, I'm like, oh shit, you know what I mean? I feel like I've got to be vulnerable, you know what I mean? I don't have to be surface level, and that's it's a very good thing, but it's also something that no matter how many times I do it, I still get a little shaky, you know what I mean? So, relationships in recovery, for me, is the most important thing that I have. It's the only thing that I have that nobody can take away, and nobody can No, not even myself. You know what I mean? Because people love me regardless of how I act, and the unconditional love in Narcotics Anonymous is a real thing, and that's what I try to show people, regardless of if someone's in active addiction or if someone's in recovery, because that's what I was shown over and over and over and over again. My story is not, hey, I got clean and I got married and everything's great. My story is over the course of about 18 years of active addiction on and off, in and out of the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. The first time I got clean, I was 22 years old, and I had attempted to get clean a few other times, not anything serious, but when I really got clean and got involved in Narcotics Anonymous, I was 22, and I stayed clean for 6.5 years. And in those 6.5 years, I developed some relationships that were very, very, very important. And later on, you'll know why they were so important. Life was great, everything was good, and I got a lot of shit. I got a lot of good shit. I got a lot of material shit. And it was not very long after I started accumulating that stuff, I stopped, being grateful for Narcotics Anonymous, and I stopped going to meetings, and I stopped talking to my sponsor. And I started working all the time, and I got into a relationship, and I had a daughter, and all this other stuff was so important. And I felt like, man, I don't have to do NA anymore because I've got all this stuff and I'm not using it, and everything's great, And that didn't last very long. I relapsed and lost everything that I had except for those relationships. And I used for another, after I relapsed, I went just off the chain, you know what I mean? Like it got so bad so fast, and it stayed that way. It was a very, very, very dark time. And really, I mean, everybody can relate to that. Everybody can relate to, going off the edge of the cliff and not seeing hope and accepting the fact that I was a drug addict and I was going to die one. You know what I mean? Shame and guilt would not let me turn around and go back to those people because I felt like I betrayed them. But I'm the kind of drug addict that instead of, well, you've betrayed them, in my mind, they don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? They don't care. They don't care about me. They don't, they don't care about me. And that comes from... That comes from not being shown unconditional love as a child and not being shown forgiveness as a kid. My mom, hopping around a little bit, but no, it's okay. My mom did the best she could. She had me when she was 17 years old. She was still a kid herself, in and out of relationships. My dad was in active addiction. He was a drug addict that never he had the opportunity to get into Narcotics Anonymous a few times and was introduced to it, but he died a drug addict. You know what I mean? And I was in active addiction when he passed away, and didn't even go to my dad's funeral. So I was like, if this motherfucker didn't care about me now, why should I care about him at any time? So, and I have a lot of shame and guilt over that. That was my dad. I mean, and I had a relationship with him, but it wasn't a good one. The last time I seen my father, we got into a fist fight because I stole his dope out of his duffel bag at my grandma's house, and that's where. And when I was using and he died, that's where that relationship was stood. You know what I mean? So I was like, good riddance. You know what I mean? So and since I've got back in recovery, I would never want my kid to think that of me, but we'll get into that a little bit more here in a second too. My mom did the best she could. Me and my little brother lived with her We were very poor. We were very we were like poor, but I didn't know that we were. It was weird. It was just like, okay, that's I was good. I was watching TV and everything was great. But we lived in the projects, and we lived in the projects until she found a man that could get her out of that. So we moved in with my stepfather. They had my sister together, and we went from the projects into this nice big house and all this nice shit. But there was always that hanging over our heads too. My mom and him had a very abusive relationship, and he always hung, you and your kids can leave over her heads. And I heard that. I was old enough to hear that. And it was it installed in me some sort of sense of insecurity and fear that no matter how I acted or what I did, this could all be taken away very quickly. And that carries on till today in some senses. It did a lot of trauma, a lot of damage there. But he was abusive. He was not a good guy. And I had to eat Thanksgiving dinner with this dude yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, he's not married to my mom anymore, but he's still my sister's dad, and we had Thanksgiving at my sister's, and I was like, oh. When I walked in and seen him yesterday, I was like, man, this motherfucker here, boy. And I tried to be nice, and I was yesterday. My wife actually said, like, you did a real good job yesterday. Yeah, thanks. I do not care for him at all because he did abuse me. He abused me. He abused my mom, and then he abused my brother. Cops were at the house. I mean, we lived in a nice neighborhood. Cops were at the house like 3 times a week because everybody was calling the cops all the damn time, and I would just go like hide and sit down, and I had fear that we would lose this stuff if I did anything different. So as a kid, I would just disassociate and I didn't know what to do, and that wasn't my responsibility then, to make those to feel like that. It was my mom's and his to make us feel safe, and I did not. He drank and used and all the stuff, and that's where I was. That's where I first used it. I know we don't use names of drugs and all that stuff, but his liquor cabinet was unlocked, and I would sneak in when they weren't home and mix me a little drink, not knowing what I was doing, and go lay down on the couch. And I was like, man, this ain't so bad, And that's where I was first introduced to narcotics and using and I didn't use much through high school, really, because I seen the way. I never went like wild in high school because I was so on edge because all the shit was happening at home still, you know what I mean? Until I moved out when I was 16 and moved in with my grandparents because me and him got into it pretty bad, and I was like, I'm not doing this no more. I didn't want to leave my mom and my brother and sister, but I was like, I'm gonna, something bad is gonna happen, and my grandparents got me out of there, and they split up a few years later, but it was just not good, and just have to see him yesterday. But I was like, shit. Every time a birthday or holiday comes and I have to go over there, I'm like, is he gonna be there? Is he not? I just don't care for him. You know what I mean? And so that's not easy. But because of Narcotics Anonymous Day, I don't have to go in there and ruin a holiday because somebody is there. It's not my house; it's my sister's house. And if she chooses to have her dad there, then that's her choice. And if I choose to go there, it's my choice, and I'm going to because it's my family. So, and I can practice principles today that don't make it so tough. When I graduated high school and went to college, I started using I thought that's what I had to do, to make friends. So I was in school, but as soon as I got into that environment where it was socially acceptable to use, it just took off. You know, I was the guy that was pledging a fraternity, and then they had to pull me in and be like, hey, you're too wild. We can't have you. And it's a true story, you know. I was crushed because those are the people that I invested myself into for just a few months, but I was like, these are my people, you know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm gonna do. And finally, somebody's gonna love me and care for me and accept me. And then they were like, man, you've went from 0 to 1,000, you know, and so I've never been able to use successfully. I don't know about you guys, but I've never been able to use successfully. I always end up causing harm. You know, that's the big thing. You know, I always end up causing harm and leaving a path of destruction behind me. And that is what I did in all my relationships when I was in active addiction. You know, I really didn't care, because it got to a point for me after I relapsed, after the 6.5 years, where I didn't care. I had lost the job that I loved, and I thought that I did. A lot of times, what I do becomes my identity. You know what I mean? So what I do for work becomes who I am. What I do in Narcotics Anonymous becomes who I am. The relationships I have becomes who I am, instead of just being me. You know, I'm a chameleon. I can adapt, and I had to do that to survive in active addiction. So it's just kind of something that's carried over, and had to do it to survive as a kid because I had so much chaos going on in my life. But it was a dark, dark place after I relapsed, and things got real bad. I did things I said I would never do. All the stuff that we've all done, you know. And I would bounce from relationship to relationship and use the person I was with until there was nothing left to use, and then I would move on. And right before I got clean this time, I was in a relationship with my wife. We were both in active addiction, which Jennifer was just talking about, and I was to a point to where every time I used, I went into full psychosis. Every time. It didn't matter if I'd been clean for it, because her kids got took away because I got arrested, and the cops came in the house and they found paraphernalia. I had warrants. I've been running from the cops for like a year, and we even had a training, like, if the cops ever show up, my name is this. You know what I mean? And she said the wrong name. I said the other name, and it was all messed up. They were like, something's going on here. She fucked that up for sure. So I went to jail. They found paraphernalia in the house. DCS showed up the next day, and we had to do something. We had to do, I was like, this is bad. This is not just me causing harm to myself and to a woman. These are little kids involved. So there was some little moral something that was a little flicker of light left inside of my soul, I guess, where I said, okay, I won't do my drug of choice anymore, but you got these prescriptions. I'll just do that. And that's how far my moral compass went at the time. You know, I was willing to take a little bit of break, but not all the way, because only thing I cared about was how I was going to get high. You know, that's, at the end of the day, that's all I cared about. And we did that very unsuccessfully. It didn't last very long, and things got bad, and those relationships that I said are unconditional from where I was clean before, I have one of those guys' numbers in my phone still, and I've had about 44 phones. If you've ever been in active addiction, you've went through some phones, and somehow the cloud or something let my contracts transfer, and I had this one dude's number, and he's still a very important part of my recovery in life today. But I called him, and I said, I don't know what to do. I do not know what to do. I am worse than I've ever been in my life. Things are so bad. I need help. And he said, okay, this is what you need to do. And that's kind of what I did. I don't ever take suggestions fully, you know what I mean? So I want to piece it up and break it up and make it my own, and then turn around and hang up the phone. And I was talking to Jennifer. I was like, do I gotta go to do I gotta do this? I mean, I'll change. Everything's gonna be fine. But it was way past that point. Like, it was, I was a homeless, beat down, broken, lying, cheating, stealing, drug addict, really I'd accepted the fact that's what I was going to be, and everybody else is having a problem with it, and I thought for sure that I could get out of this one too, and I couldn't. I couldn't, and I'm so grateful for those people that said hell no, we're done with you. I always turned to my grandfather, the one that brought me out of the house when I was a kid. My grandmother just passed away, and he looked at me one night whenever he had to pick me up at the hospital because I'd stole Jennifer's car and ran it off the side of the. I thought people were chasing me down the road, and I ran it off the side of an embankment and towards the hospital, trying to get to the hospital because I thought if I got to the hospital I'd be safe. That's how crazy I was, and he had to pick me up that morning, and he looked at me crying and said, "I cannot do this anymore. Your grandmother just died. I don't have it in me. I can't deal with you." And that was one of the moments where I was like, "You've got to do something. There's nobody left to use." That's what it really was. And so I went to treatment and I didn't have nowhere to go when I got out, so I decided I'm going to go back to the town where I lived, where I was successful. So I moved back to Murfreesboro and hopped back into Narcotics Anonymous with both feet. And those people that were there before, it had been some years. The ones that were still there embraced me and loved me, and I felt that unconditional love again for the first time since I'd relapsed. And it's the people that I have relationships with in Narcotics Anonymous are so important to me. Because of the things that have happened in my life, I had a hard time building relationships with men because I never trusted men. I always thought men were going to abuse me, abuse the people I love, or take everything away from me, So I gravitated towards women, and then I ended up using them for what I needed, which was to get high. I didn't care about really nothing else, to be honest. And so Narcotics Anonymous, the first relationship I got was with my sponsor. And I've switched sponsors since I've gotten clean, but I moved towns, and it was weird. And we were both like, "Hey, man, I love you so much, but we need to." This isn't working out for either of us. We're not having the time because life does get busy, and once you get clean and start working on yourself, and good things start happening, and so I've switched sponsors. But both the sponsors I've had, that's the foundation that's being laid for the rest of the relationships that I have in my life. They're the people. My sponsor's the person that I can get vulnerable with, and he doesn't care. He shares with me stuff that's going on with him, and I am in turn able to share with him my deepest, darkest shit that eats me up on the inside. Still today, I'm a self-centered person in recovery. You know what I mean? There's still parts of me that, I hope Lorenzo gives a good speech about me whenever I go up there that's the kind of person I am. You know what I mean? I don't need to just go up to the microphone, tell them all the good shit that I do, and that's where my brain goes, by default, is I want to be in front of people getting attention, but then I'm like, I don't want to be in front of nobody getting attention, yeah. It's a very much. I'm grateful that Narcotics Anonymous has shown me, and the people in Narcotics Anonymous show me that it's not a instant process of fully being healed, because if that was the case, I'd be worried about myself, because I'm like, damn, that ain't happened to me yet, But life has changed a lot. I'm in a relationship, a marriage with somebody that I was in active addiction with, and somebody we're getting to walk through the process of recovery individually together. My recovery is not her recovery, and it can't be. I don't want it to be. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. That would not work. But as we grow as individuals, our relationship gets so much better. There was a lot of trauma and a lot of one thing I do like, though, I'm gonna tell you real quick. I always give her a hard time. I got clean June 16th, and I got 4 years June 16th. She'll have 4 years in a few weeks. You know what I mean? So I got clean first. So that's what so no matter how bad I was, I still got more clean time than you. So June 16th, 2021, and but we walk this path together. But if it wasn't for Narcotics Anonymous and our sponsors and the relationships that we have with both men and women that have come before us and have worked steps and are guiding us through not only our relationship but our personal journey, this would never work. I'm telling you right now, I would not. My disease would not allow that to happen for sure, because I am. There's still times I'm a self-destructive individual, and whenever good things happen, by default, I want to run. There's a lot of relationships. So I'm back up just a second. So when I was talking about the relationship with my dad, I had a daughter that was born when I got clean the first time. I was 25 when she was born. Had a few years clean, and I remember when we brought her home from the hospital. I was up one night with her, and she was baby. She was baby, probably less than a month old, and I remember holding her and telling her, I will never be the father to you that my dad was to me. I promise you that. And, I did. I relapsed, and I went back out, and I abandoned her, and there was years went by that I didn't speak to her. Didn't speak to her mother. Didn't speak to her. And in my mind, I justified that by saying, you're too bad off. Like, I didn't know the difference between reality and non-reality when I was using for a lot of the time I was there. I was psychosis a lot of the times. I was a crazy person. And the moments of clarity that I had about my daughter, I thought, this is what's best for her, isn't for me not to be in the picture. And probably was, but that's how I justified it to myself, to not feel the shame and the guilt that I still feel today because of that. I will say this, that is the hardest thing that I deal with in my life. It's this thing that I don't talk about a lot because I still don't have contact with my daughter. And I've made attempts, feeble attempts, but because of fear of rejection, I fear that I will reach, like I could really reach out and start contacting like her grandmother, her mom. I've sent hundreds of messages to, like, hey, since I've gotten clean, because when I first got clean, it's like, if I can have a relationship with my daughter, I'm never going to be able to stay clean, But Narcotics Anonymous doesn't have limits to it. If you work the program in Narcotics Anonymous and you work on yourself, you can stay clean no matter what. But there's other people involved too. You know what I mean? And other people are suffer from my decisions, whether I'm clean or not. And fear has stopped me from really going and getting doing what I got to do to have that relationship. And she's 14 years old now and lives in Jackson, Georgia. And I have a lot of, and this is like I said, it's the hardest thing that I deal with. But I have a lot of fear that I'm going to reach out and she won't want nothing to do with me, because I can relate to that. Because my father did the exact same thing. I did exactly what I promised her when she was a month old. I did that to her, and I have a lot of fear that she won't want to be a part of my life. And then I have fear, like, if that happens, how my reaction is going to be, because I don't know, because I feel pain, but I don't know if I've felt pain like that before, because I don't know what that's going to feel. I mean, like the fear of the unknown, and it could go the opposite way, you know what I mean? It could be like, I've been waiting on you to call me for so long, but it's probably not what's going to happen. That's what I like to picture in my head sometimes. So I talk to my sponsor, and I talk to these people, and I talk to all the people that are important to me in my life, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And they're like, you need to work on yourself. You need to work on you. And when the time is right, you'll be the man that is ready to have a relationship with your daughter. And regardless of what happens, you'll be okay. And so that's the toughest relationship. There's really good relationships, and there's really tough things in life. Relationships are so hard at times, and that relationship, the fear of having or not having that relationship is scary as hell to me. It's because I had a relationship with him until things got bad for me, and I'm a self-centered drug addict. When things get bad, I get going. You know what I mean? And and none of that's her fault. It's all mine. And so yeah, that's tough. But yeah, it's real tough. But I know everything's going to be all right, because Narcotics Anonymous, I can stay clean, and I can keep working on myself, and I can keep working on those relationships with these people that are going to show me unconditional love no matter what happens. And I know today that everything's going to be okay. Scott, thank you again for asking me and Jennifer to do this. A lot of times when I hear relationships in recovery, I'm thinking, like, we're going to go up here and we're going to talk about our marriage the whole time, and we're going to talk about how great things are, and things are great. Like, we're both growing as individuals. Things are great, but there's other relationships in my life besides just that romantic relationship that I have that are vital to who I am, whether positive or negative, and that reflects on every area of my life, and because of Narcotics Anonymous, I'm able to show the love that I have been given, and like I said in the beginning, those relationships are the most important things that I have. So, thanks everybody.
Thanks very much. Thanks to both of our speakers. Let's close the meeting. Circle up.